Amoris Laetitia, or the joy of love in the family, in Pope Francis' apostolic exhortation after the 2-year synod of bishops on the family. And everybody wants to know, did anything change? Is there anything different about the Church's teaching on the family in this exhortation?
Well, I would say there's a whole new approach that is rather revolutionary if it's implemented. And by a new approach, I mean that we've had 30 or 40 years here of popes who have taught very specific things about the family and marriage and have made it very clear what Catholics need to believe and how they need to act. There's been an emphasis on doctrine. There's been an emphasis on what the Church teaches and an emphasis on the ideals that the Church holds married couples to and families to. And in this document, we have a Pope coming at it from a somewhat different angle. He's saying that, you know, we all know that the Church has to uphold these ideals, but the Church also has to meet people where they are in their real lives. And so I think the approach that Pope Francis is taking is that pastors need to be pastors. They need to get closer to the people they're trying to serve. If there are people, for example, in what the Church calls irregular unions in some way, they should not exclude them from the church community. They should draw them in, try to lead them to church teaching, but not in a way that rejects them. And this seems to be the main point of what Pope Francis is saying. And he's doing it in language which is new, fresh, with a surprising degree of self-criticism. You know, the Church, he says, has not always helped these matters. In fact, it's added to the problems in a couple of ways. First of all, by being too abstract and theological in its approach to the family, which doesn't make sense to the average people out there. And second, he says, perhaps we've focused too exclusively in marriage on the duty to procreate, and not enough on the relationship aspects of marriage and the family. So these are pretty strong challenges coming right from the pen of the Pope.
Absolutely, and we know that it's his pen because it sounds so much like him, like we've come to recognize his voice in documents. Was there anything in the document that surprised you, or what was the thing that surprised you the most when you read it?
The chapter where he writes about actual family life and love, which is where he gets into the way husbands should treat wives and wives should treat husbands and children should be treated and everything else. This is dangerous terrain for popes, I think.
Or any priest, really.
Any priest, really, because, you know, the automatic assumption by a lot of people is, what do they know?
Right.
It was surprising to me to see how much Pope Francis knew. And I concluded after reading that chapter that this guy, obviously, he's never had the direct experience as the father of in a family, but he's clearly done a lot of listening as a pastor when he was bishop and archbishop in Argentina, because this is a man who has very plain-spoken wisdom on these pages, and it all makes sense. And you know, I'm a father, I'm a husband. Reading these pages, there was so much that resonated.
Really quickly, what does this do? I mean, now that the synod is over, we've been waiting 2+ years for it to be over. Now that the whole thing has been concluded, what impact does this have on the synod of bishops and the legacy of the synod of bishops long term?
Well, I think it shows that Pope Francis took the synod seriously. One thing that was clear to me in this document was that he did not go beyond what the bishops themselves had raised and had discussed. He was not the Pope imposing something on the bishops. He's listening to them. And this has to be very encouraging for the institution of the synods of bishops, because the Pope said, I want your input, don't hold back, say what you want, I'll listen, and he did. And so I think it bodes very well for the future of the synod of bishops.
Can't wait to see what comes next.
Yeah.
John, thanks very much.
You're welcome.